Hello, this is Win from ChineseRef.com. Today we'll be talking about the 4 tips in choosing an Italki teacher. First, a small introduction about Italki. If you don't know what Italki is, it's basically a platform which matches language teaching teachers with students. Now, Italki as a platform is a very useful platform because for students, there's thousands of teachers for you to choose from, which means that you have the ability to have access to many teachers. Unfortunately, having thousands of teachers also comes with a problem. How do you determine which teacher is good for you? Now, italki does have a rating system. However, if you've used it before, you'll know that it's basically broken since all teachers are rated 4.9 and up to 5, basically, which means all teachers are rated the same, so you cannot tell which teachers are good or bad. Here, we'll share 4 tips in choosing an italki teacher. Number 1, find a teacher with experience. Now, how do you know which teacher has experience? There are a couple of ways in which we can know from italki's profile. First, in each teacher's profile, the teacher states what their working experience is in terms of language teaching, whether they've taught overseas or in China, for example, how long they've taught, how many years, how many students they've worked with, etc. It's basically the teacher's resume. So when you come into an italki teacher's profile, you see something like this. First, you'll see the teacher's profile. Next, you'll see an About Me section where the teacher will describe his or her teaching experience as concerned with the language that they're teaching, in this case, Chinese. As you can see, this person has been certified as a Chinese trainer and has teaching experience for many years. He also has been teaching Chinese for 3 years, according to this profile. And besides this part, when we come down a little, we can see in this person's resume that in his working experience, he has been a Chinese teacher and foreign colleague assistant in an automobile consultant company. And also, he has worked as a private tutor. And if you look more in detail, you can see here that he's describing here his experience as a Chinese teacher to his colleagues and also his experience as a private tutor online and also offline. In addition, he has uploaded some certificates here. So he also has TEFL and TESOL certificates, which means that his English is probably quite decent because he can also teach English. So this is an example of one teacher. An example of another teacher here. This teacher has a diploma in teaching Chinese to speakers of other languages. And here she describes her experience in teaching Chinese. However, in this case, she does not show her resume. A third teacher here, she also has teaching experience and she says she's been teaching Chinese for almost 7 years and has students from many countries. And specifically from 2016 to 2017, she was a volunteer Chinese teacher at a Confucius Institute in Georgia, and she was teaching students 7 to 18 years old. She also helped students pass HSK tests. So these are 3 examples of teachers who have experience teaching Chinese. A second way that we can determine the teacher's language teaching experience is by the number of lessons the teacher has taught on italki. In each italki teacher's profile, there is a number which shows how many lessons the teacher has taught. If you go down to the statistics part of the teacher's bio, you will see that not only will it tell how many sessions the teachers have taught totally, but also how many sessions the teacher has taught in the past 3 months and how many lessons they've taught in each of those past 3 months.
For example, this teacher has taught a total of 507 lessons on Italki. If you come down here to the statistics, however, you can see that even though he has taught 507 classes on Italki, recently he has not taught so much. So he has not been so active on Italki. This second teacher, she has about 679 lessons on Italki, so not much different from the other one. However, when you go down here and look at the statistics, she has completed about 100 lessons each month over the past 3 months. So it means that she has been pretty active on Italki and she has been teaching a lot of students on Italki compared to the other teacher.
Now, how is this relevant? Well, if a teacher has taught many lessons in the past 3 months, it must mean that they have a lot of students. This will also tell you that this teacher is probably quite popular on Italki. And a popular teacher on Italki, which has many students, means that the teacher has been very active on Italki. And likely, the students respond well to the teacher. Number 2, find teachers with long-term students.
So this is the teacher's profile page. At the top of the page, we see here the video. If we come down to the bottom, we see the review section. These are the reviews that the students have given the teacher. Now, we are looking for students who have taken quite a few lessons with this teacher. These are considered as long-term students. So how do we find them? You see the student's name here, and under the name we have the number of lessons here. This number of lessons is the number of lessons that the student has taken with his teacher. For example, this person has taken 38 lessons with this teacher. So I would consider this a long-term student. This is another long-term student. She has taken 51 lessons. These two are also long-term students. They've also taken about 30 lessons each. And also these two. So we can see that just by looking briefly here, this teacher has many long-term students. Now, you might also be curious about when these students took the classes with the teacher. So as we can see here, this is the date of the last comment from the student, and he has last taken the lessons with the teacher in April 26th, 2021. For this person is March 17th, and for these two it's quite recent. It's August 18th, 2021. So these two students are quite recent students. You might also want to go and read the comments from these long-term students. Some students leave quite a few messages for their teacher, and this means that they're quite happy with their teacher. So this is how we can find teachers which have long-term students, and you should consider the comments from these long-term students as quite important. I would say more important than the comments from short-term students, because these students have been with this teacher quite a while.
Although we can see how many students a teacher has taught on Italki's profile, this isn't really as important as how many long-term students the teacher has had. Why is this? Well, if you think about it, a teacher can have many students in the past, but if each of these students only take 1 or 2 classes, what does that mean about their opinion on the teacher? Basically, it just means that the teacher has taken some sample classes with the teacher, but they just thought that the teacher wasn't their fit. So it's better to choose teachers which has many long-term students. You can look at the teacher's testimonials from the students. and see how many sessions the student has taken with the teacher to tell how many long-term students the teacher has had. Each long-term student is basically a vote of confidence from the student, since the student would unlikely pay the teacher for many lessons if they didn't think that the teacher was at least decent. How many lessons should we consider many lessons? I would say in general 20 to 30 lessons. Why is this? If you think about it, most students will probably take 1 or 2 classes per week. So if a student takes 2 classes per week, 20 sessions would mean that the student has been with this teacher for about 10 weeks or nearly 2.5 months. If the student has had 1 lesson per week, this means that the student has had 20 weeks worth of lessons with this teacher. So this student has been with his teacher for about 4 months or 5 months, for example. Number 3, rate the teacher's English language ability. Now, in each teacher's profile, the teacher will state what languages they can speak besides the language that they are teaching. Now, keep in mind that this is the teacher's own rating of how well they can speak those other languages. So it's not uncommon for you to find teachers of Chinese which say that they can speak English well, but when you take sample classes with them, you find out that the English language ability just isn't good enough to teach you Chinese. How do we determine a teacher's English language ability without looking at the profile? In the teacher's profile, there is a button for you to contact the teacher. When you press this button, you will be faced with a few questions about your language learning goals, your language learning experience, etc. And also, there is often a part where you can fill in your custom questions to the teacher. What you should do is ask your questions to your teacher about their teaching, about their past experiences, about how they structure their classes, and of course, ask them all in English and see how well they can answer your questions. If the teacher can answer all of your questions in English and the English is decent, I mean communicatable, there is a very high probability that the teacher can speak English well enough to be able to teach you. However, if they choose to reply to your questions in Chinese, it is very likely that they are not confident enough in their own English language ability to be able to reply to you, which means they probably won't be able to teach you in English very well either. So you can use this contact the teacher button as a way of screening out the teachers which does not have sufficient English language ability before you take sample lessons. Number 4, find a teacher with relatively good teaching experience relative to their price. How do you find a teacher with relatively good teaching experience relative to their price? First, I should say that you should first prioritize a teacher with relatively good teaching experience, both on and outside Italki. However, many of these teachers charge a pretty high price since they are in high demand from the students. So, if you want a teacher with relatively good teaching experience at a lower price, what you can do is try to find a new teacher which has come into Italki but has good teaching experience outside of Italki. Scan through their profile and see that they have extensive teaching experience. You would have to take lessons with several of these teachers to see that they actually have good teaching experience. Some of these teachers are willing to charge a lower price when they first come into Italki to get new students with them. So it's a good chance for you to try to get teachers with relatively good teaching ability relative to their price. Keep in mind that since these teachers are trying to get more students in the beginning, when they get more students, it is possible that they will start charging you a higher price. However, in some cases, it is possible for you to negotiate a lower price if you are an old student. So how did you like this video? If you thought it was useful, please help us by pressing like and subscribe. You can also visit our website, link in the description below, where we have the full guide of how to choose an Italki teacher and other guides relating to learning Chinese online. We will be coming out with the video version of that guide soon. See you next time.